Welcome to Not a Fallacy, where I explain how fallacy websites and sometimes even logic textbooks have got it wrong. Lists of logical fallacies can be a great way to learn how to quickly diagnose where the structure of an argument is invalid, but only if you really learn what actually makes the fallacies fallacious. Sounding similar is not enough. And sometimes the listed ones are just not fallacious. It's about time somebody pushed back against the widespread abuse of claiming fallacy to dismiss legitimate arguments. Today's topic is the no true Scotsman fallacy, where I will argue that no true Scotsman generally shouldn't be listed as a fallacy. The no true Scotsman fallacy was first described by Anthony Flew in this little story. Imagine Hamish McDonald, a Scotsman, sitting down with his Glasgow Morning Herald and seeing an article about how the Brighton sex maniac strikes again. Hamish is shocked and declares that no Scotsman would do such a thing. The next day, he sits down to read his Glasgow Morning Herald again, and this time finds an article about an Aberdeen man whose brutal actions make the Brighton sex maniac seem almost gentlemanly. This fact shows that Hamish was wrong in his opinion, but is he going to admit this? Not likely. This time he says, no true Scotsman would do such a thing. Aside from the fact that this little story is kind of racist, I'd also like to point out something which is missing. There's no argument in this story. Hamish has not committed a fallacy because he has not attempted to make an argument. One can't be said to argue badly when one hasn't argued at all. In the story, Hamish has merely invoked the perfectly reasonable and not at all fallacious idea that there is more to being a Scotsman than being physically located in Scotland or having Scottish parents. He is saying that there is an abstract ideal or spirit of Scotland which such behavior violates. He is saying that this Aberdeen sex maniac is a traitor and an enemy to Scottish society who deserves to be ostracized, to not even be considered one of his people. Do I know that there is such an ideal or spirit of Scottishness? Yes, but only because nearly all human communities have a basically similar ethos. It is a nearly universal human idea to think that a bad person does not deserve to count as part of the tribe. You may disagree with Hamish's idea of exclusivity and intolerance for whatever reason, but you wouldn't be objecting to the structure of an argument Hamish is making. You'd only be disagreeing with the content of Hamish's opinion. Genuine logical fallacies concern an argument's structure, not its content. Since no true Scotsman is an objection to content and not to structure, it isn't a genuine fallacy. I could describe two ways in which the false claim of no true Scotsman as a fallacy is often abused in arguments, and both involve ignoring exclusive features of definitions. First, people will rhetorically place a good person in a bad category which they don't really belong to by ignoring exclusive features of the definition of that bad category in order to discredit the good person, and claim no true Scotsman when you point this out. Second, people will rhetorically place a bad person in a good category which they don't really belong to by ignoring exclusive features of the definition of that good category in order to discredit that good category, and claim no true Scotsman when you point this out. In both cases, your objection to this false categorization really is structurally identical to what Hamish said. You have really done what is commonly referred to as no true Scotsman by insisting that this categorization is incorrect, and yet you have not committed any genuine fallacy. because there is no problem with the structure of what you are saying. No true Scotsman is not a genuine fallacy. In its original context, Anthony Flew is trying to use the story of Hamish to debunk a genuinely fallacious method of defense for the view that democracies never start wars, in which the Democrat tries to show that any apparent democracy which starts wars wasn't really a democracy somehow. Flew is correct on this point. Democracies do, in fact, start wars. But the fallacy committed by these Democrats is not no true Scotsman, it is moving the goalposts. I think that the informal fallacy of moving the goalposts and various other named fallacies can more than adequately cover all the instances of no true Scotsman which are genuinely fallacious, while no true Scotsman is overkill. It ends up calling fallacious many entirely legitimate opinions. That's why I think no true Scotsman should be retired or delisted as a named fallacy. This often comes up in relation to statistics. For example, a Christian might say something like, "No Christian disbelieves in the resurrection," and the response from an atheist might be something like, "Polling data says that some percentage I just made up of Christians disbelieve in the resurrection." And the Christian would then respond, "No true Christian disbelieves in the resurrection." And the atheist would automatically respond, "No true Scotsman fallacy." The Christian hasn't committed a fallacy, even if you disagree with the content of their opinion, because poll respondents aren't necessarily Christians just because they say they are. People aren't necessarily always what they say they are just because they say they are. Definitions matter. Or the atheist could say something like, "Atheists don't start wars," and the Christian could say, "Communists are atheists and they start wars," and the atheist would then respond, "Real atheists don't start wars," trying to define the communists as not really being real atheists somehow. I would strongly disagree with the atheist's opinion on this, but they haven't committed a logical fallacy. They've just expressed what I think is an unsound opinion about the definition of atheism. By the way, I'm not claiming to be any kind of Scotsman myself. I'm just an American who happens to have a Scottish last name. Does that mean I get to wear the MacLean plaid or visit the MacLean Castle? I have no idea. My point is that more often than not, when no true Scotsman is dragged out, it is when there is some essential feature of a definition which really does exclude the case in question that the person claiming the fallacy has occurred wants to ignore. What a definition excludes is at least as important to its meaningfulness as what it includes. If you've always lived in Japan, you've never been to Scotland, you don't know anyone there, you don't have any plans to go or to meet anyone, you don't have any interest in Scottish culture or history, you can't stand bagpipes, you have no clan or kilt and just generally have no connection to Scotland whatsoever at any point in your entire life other than saying you're a Scotsman, then you are just not a Scotsman. Deal with it.